Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to another sponsored Blade and Soul video. In this one, I want to check out the other dungeon that came out. We did the Mushin's Tower video already. This video, I want to check out 6-man Bloody Shade Harbor. I want to get around to a 4-man video as well, but I still got to go back and do the old Poharan dungeons as well, so we still got quite a few to do. I'm basically just going to show you a few trips between bosses. There's a lot of skips you can do to completely avoid trash here. If you don't trust yourself in the party finder, then you may just want to kill things on the way to each of the mini bosses, but it's a pretty straightforward dungeon. So after killing some ads or skipping to the mini bosses, let's move on to the first boss. So the first boss of Bloody Shade Harbor is Venomous Thrasher. Now for the most part, he's your standard Thrasher. He's got a full circle AoE, a rear AoE, a quick 2-hit combo, and a quick 1-hit. His only major mechanic is when he jumps to the ceiling. Once he jumps up there, he'll start shooting poison puddles on the ground that if you step in, will deal strong damage over time. Spread out so you don't hit each other with these puddles, and watch where you're dropping them. There's also going to be a bunch of eggs that spawn around the arena, as well as a bunch of guns you can use to destroy the eggs. Use the 1 skill on the guns, not the left click, the 1 skill. The left click you can actually use to shoot the Thrasher, and if you hit him enough times, he'll eventually fall back to the arena so you can continue the fight. If you don't knock him down for a certain period of time, he'll come down on his own, but he has a pretty tight enrage timer, so you'll probably want to knock him down pretty quick. The only other major mechanic during this phase is that he'll charge up an attack with a large warning. Now this attack deals a lot of damage and applies a poison debuff. So, in order to dodge it, you can use either a Force Master, an Assassin, or you can wait just near one of those water drains around the arena and actually use those to cleanse any of your poison debuffs off. These water drains also give a speed buff which you can use for getting to the eggs faster, as well as a damage buff that you can use on the Venomous Thrasher. If you knock him down, you can just go into the water drain and then get the damage buff and go completely ham sandwich on him. That's actually one thing I like to do. Drag the Venomous Thrasher near one of the puddles so when he falls, he's right next to one and everyone can jump in it and quickly get the damage buff. Keep in mind you can only get it every so often, so if you got it while he was still on the ceiling, you probably won't be able to get it again by the time he comes back down. Just repeat this a couple of times and you should be fine. It's a pretty easy fight. Just be sure to beat the enrage. Skipping to the second boss can be a little bit problematic. If you don't want to fight any of the mobs, there's a giant pile of boxes occasionally as you're going through this little maze. You can destroy those to make shortcuts for yourself, but what a lot of people will do is actually jump up on top of the boxes and try gliding over all the enemies. If you're going to do this, be very careful. There's a lot of gunners hanging around on the top of these crates, and they will deal a lot of damage to you. So basically, try to fly low and avoid their aggro range. Or you can just do it the standard way. It'll take longer, but it's definitely a lot safer than having to deal with people dying, getting stuck in combat, you know, the usual problems when trying to skip trash in a dungeon. After you get through all that though, move on to the second boss. Next up we have Munitions Officer Bloodmane, and this boss isn't really too much more difficult than the first. He has a much higher health pool, but his attacks are pretty basic. He's got a single target attack, he's got an AoE multi-hit spin, which he'll usually follow up with an AoE daze plus damage. They have pretty fast cast times though, so be ready to block them or avoid them pretty quickly. He's got a conal swing in front of him, and if you're at range, he also has a ranged grapple that can pull you in and then combo with a few melee hits. He'll also occasionally summon these robots that do the spinning attack around the arena that inflicts bleed, but these robots are also your allies. My chat at least let me know that if these robots hit him, they will apply a stacking bleed on him as well to help deflate his quite large health pool. Other than that, the only major mechanic is this room-wide AoE he can do. We usually just assign one person to dual CC him so that way it gets interrupted. If you need to, use 2 different people in order to interrupt it, but worst case scenario, you can always use immunities in order to avoid it. Honestly, it wasn't too difficult of a fight. Just avoid the machines going around the room, don't get hit unnecessarily by his attacks, and be sure to CC that big room-wide AoE. Make sure no one's doing any accidental CCs during that period either. If he gets to his enrage, he actually just spams that attack, the AoE, over and over and over again, and he'll heal for a little bit in between them. But it's very possible to just keep dodging it and out-damage that regen if you need to get to that far. After you kill Bloodmane, as well as a few more trash pulls, you'll come to the third boss, the Widow Sisters. Now you have Cobalt Widow and Scarlet Widow, and they each have about 1.4 million health. They both have very similar movesets, although Cobalt Widow will actually use Ice Magic and Kung Fu Master skills, while Scarlet Widow will use Fire Magic and Kung Fu Master skills. Other than the fact that they need to die at the same time, or at least near the same time so they can't resurrect each other, there really isn't too much to say about this fight. From what people tell me in the chat, a mechanic I've never seen and is apparently the core mechanic to this fight is that if the two sisters are in the same form, as in they're both in their Kung Fu Master form or they're both in their mage form at the same time for too long, that apparently they'll do some super crazy uber attack that'll kill you. I've never seen it, I'm only relaying to you what I've heard, but they change forms every 33%. The Ice Sister will start in Mage form, and the Fire Sister will start in Kung Fu Master form, and then every 33% they'll change. So at 66%, Cobalt Widow goes into Kung Fu Master skills, and at 66%, Scarlet Widow goes into Fire Mage skills. So apparently you just have to make sure that they don't end up both at the same form for too long. I've heard a couple of different strategies for this one. One is to go 3 people on each of them and just kind of balance the damage, and it should work out. The other one is to have one person tank one of the sisters, have the other 5 destroy one of these sisters, since they only have 1.4 million health, and then switch to the other one. Apparently that only works if you have enough damage to kill the second sister before the first sister resurrects. Otherwise, it's just going to end poorly for you. The 3-in-3 strategy is probably your safest bet unless you have really good gear, really high damage, or you're going in here with a group of friends. So just, tank them separately, kill them, and make sure that they're taking about the same amount of damage at about the same time. You can also avoid that little 5-dash skill if they both hit 70% and 30% at the same time, but even if that doesn't happen, it's not going to be the end of the world. Should be an easy boss. Let's move on to the last one. Now, the last boss is Admiral He Mu-jin, and he can be pretty annoying. In his first 20 to 23%, all he really does is a few AoEs around him. If you see him dashing around a little bit, landing a few attacks, it's nothing too major. The only one really annoying attack is if you see him point into the air, get out of his immediate range. You're not going to see an AoE circle, but what he'll usually do is jump into the air, land, knock a bunch of people down, pull a few into him, and actually pull one, start spinning them around, and throw them into the wall. You can CC him to stop him from doing this, but otherwise, you could just avoid it whenever you see him jump into the air like that. When he hits around 77 to 80%, you'll see him jump to the middle of the room and summon a clone of himself. This clone has a few 100,000 health and does a lot of similar attacks. Most commonly, it'll just spin around the room and just be annoying to everyone. Now, you have 2 strategies here. You can either have like a summoner or a destroyer, pull him into the corner of the room after he's done spinning and just keep him busy, while everybody else rushes the main boss down to 50%, which will automatically despawn the clone. The other option, and something that may feel a little bit more comfortable, is after the clone stops spinning, everybody just jumps on him, deals the few 100,000 damage, and gets him out of the way, and then you can continue the fight like normal. He Mu-jin himself can also do this spinning attack, as you can see right here. You can't block it, so don't try like I just did. But after you get him to 50%, or just enough time passes and you kill his clone, he'll start going to the middle of the room and summoning just bombardment after bombardment of ice AoEs. Now, if you're like me and you're colorblind, it's really, really hard to see. This was my first attempt on him that you're seeing here, and I died and I stayed dead for the rest of the fight. If you can see the AoEs, great, dodge them. Use your immunities, get out of the way, just don't get hit by them because they deal a lot of damage. As he gets lower and lower on health, he'll start spamming them more and more, to the point where when he's about at 10%, he'll just spam them as well as a nearby AoE over and over and over again. So at that point, you're just trying to kill him to not get hit by all these ice AoEs and whatnot. Between 50 and 10% though, he uses a few new attacks, some more undodgeable AoEs, but he doesn't really do anything too threatening. He Mu-jin isn't as mechanically in-depth as Poharan is, but he does a lot of damage, so any mistakes will likely lead to somebody needing to go into chi recovery form, in which case, try to bring the boss away from them. You really don't want them to have to deal with that problem. And that's it for my 6-man walkthrough of Bloody Shade Harbor. It wasn't all too difficult, but the 4-man should prove to be a little bit more interesting. I'll try to get a video to that so that way you guys have something to reference in the near future. If you want to, you can just use this 6-man video for the 4-man reference. Just know everything's going to hit harder. There's going to be no AoE indicators, which on He Mu-jin may actually be a better thing, and you're just going to have to try a little bit harder. Cobalt Sisters will hit harder. The munitions officer will require a bit more DPS, but you really got to just make sure you know the mechanics hands down. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned for more videos on Blade and Soul. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one, and until then, take care.